I thought a DNA test would be a fun family activity, then we found out my brother was switched at birth and doesn't belong to us. My brother and I were both born in Venezuela, but our roots are 100% Galician Spanish. We've been living in Spain for nearly 18 years now. I was 9 when we moved, and my brother was barely 2. I think my parents were struggling financially back in Venezuela, and with the political climate getting worse, they made the decision to return to their homeland. Since my dad had Spanish citizenship through his parents, the transition wasn't too complicated. Plus, my mom's parents were still living in a small town not far from A Coruña at the time, so we had family to land with. About a year ago, I got really into the whole ancestry DNA thing. I took one of those tests and found the results super fascinating. It kinda became an obsession. I thought it'd be cool to get everyone in the family to try it, just to see how we all compared. I managed to convince my mom to take hers a few months later, and around Christmas, my cousin, my dad's brother's daughter, took hers too while visiting. I couldn't get my dad on board. He's totally paranoid about American companies collecting his DNA, as he puts it. He's convinced they'll clone him or something crazy like that. My brother wasn't really interested either, but I eventually talked him into it. I promised I'd handle the whole process and even do a fun reveal with his results, kind of like a cheesy gender reveal party but for ancestry. He only agreed because I offered to pay, and he figured it'd be interesting to learn more about where we come from. So at that point, my mom, my cousin, and I had already done our tests, and everything checked out perfectly. I matched with my mom at about 50%, and I showed about 25% shared DNA with my cousin, which lines up exactly as expected for paternal relatives. Roughly 2 months ago, I ordered the test kit for my brother. When it arrived, I went over to his place to help him do it. He had no interest in figuring it out on his own. We opened the kit together, and he gave his sample, though it took ages because he's terrible at producing spit on demand. I sealed the tube myself and personally dropped it in the mail the next day. Honestly, I was pretty excited to see his results. I couldn't wait to compare them with mine. But when the results came in earlier this week, I've been in complete shock ever since. I haven't told a single soul about what I found. I spent over an hour on the phone with Ancestry's customer support, and they assured me the results were accurate. No mix-up, no error, but they said they'd look into it, whatever that means. The guy on the line just kept repeating how reliable their testing is and how unlikely a sample mix-up would be because of their barcode tracking system. Here's the part that's messing with my head: my brother doesn't show up in my list of matches. At all. And when I check his matches, I'm not listed either. Neither is our mom. Neither is my cousin from our dad's side. The people in his match list are complete strangers to me. At first, I thought it might be some sort of privacy setting or technical glitch. But the support rep walked me through every setting and confirmed everything was visible and accurate. And then there's the ethnicity breakdown. It's totally different. My mom's results show she's about 60% Portuguese, and mine came back with roughly 40%, which makes sense if I got about half of hers and some from my dad. But my brother? He has 0 Portuguese ancestry. None. Instead, he has 44% indigenous Americas, specifically from Colombia and Venezuela, which is bizarre because no one else in our family has that. Not my mom, not me, not even my cousin. And he also has 12% South Italian in his results. Again, no one in our family has any known Italian heritage. I've been freaking out because nothing about this adds up. It's not like my mom cheated. If she had, he'd still show up as half related to her. And he's definitely not adopted. I was 6 when she was pregnant with him. I remember her being pregnant. I remember being excited about becoming a big brother. It was real. I started wondering, could it be something like a sperm or egg donation? Was that even a thing in Venezuela back in 2004? I did some research, and apparently it was possible but rare and very expensive. And why would they even need to go that route? I'm clearly biologically related to both of them, since I match with family on both sides. So fertility wasn't an issue when they had me. Could my brother's DNA results somehow be wrong? But the company seems so confident. They've got all these safeguards in place to prevent mistakes, and the support guy kept emphasizing how accurate the matching algorithm is. He did suggest trying a second company to double-check, but honestly, it just feels like they're trying to squeeze more money out of me. Has anyone else ever gone through something like this? I'm terrified of asking my brother to take another test. I don't want him to start asking why. And I'm even more scared of bringing this up to my parents. What if this uncovers something they never meant for us to know? But the thing is, when my brother agreed to take the test, my mom didn't act nervous at all. She seemed totally fine with it. If she knew there was a secret buried in our DNA, wouldn't she have tried to stop him? I've been running through every possible explanation in my head, but nothing fits. I'm distracted all day at work, barely sleeping at night, and I've been avoiding calls from my family because I'm scared I'll slip and say something I shouldn't. My boyfriend's starting to notice I'm acting weird, but I can't bring myself to tell him either. When I search for my brother's name and my DNA matches, absolutely nothing comes up. And it's the same on his end, I'm not listed there either. Our mom's name doesn't appear in his matches, and he's nowhere in hers. According to Ancestry, we share 0 centimorgans, that's the unit they use to measure how much DNA you have in common with someone. Just to give you a sense of comparison, I share 3,481 centimorgans with my mom, which is normal for a parent-child match, and 91 centimorgans with my cousin on my dad's side. So it's not just that the numbers are low or unexpected, it's that we're showing up as complete strangers in this system. Here's how our ethnicity results break down, in case that helps paint the picture. My mom's 60% Portuguese, 33% Spanish, 5% Irish, and 2% Welsh. Mine, 58% Spanish, 40% Portuguese, 1% Irish, 1% French. My dad hasn't taken the test yet, so we don't have his data. My brothers, 44% Indigenous Americas, Venezuela and Colombia, 36% Spanish, 12% Southern Italian, 4% Basque, and 4% North African. I want to make it really clear, I'm not turning this into some kind of all-about-me thing. I'm just honestly confused and overwhelmed in trying to process what all of this means. I don't think he could have been a sperm donor baby either, because if that were the case, my mom would still share DNA with him. And again, I remember her being pregnant. I was there. I felt the kicks. Edit 2. I wish I could respond to every comment, but there are just too many, so I'll try to address some of the most common theories here. First off, no, this wasn't a prank. I was with my brother when he did the test. I watched him spit into the tube myself, and I sealed the package and mailed it personally. I'm 100% sure that it was his sample. And honestly, he's not the kind of person who could pull off something that elaborate. He doesn't have the patience or the planning skills for that kind of thing. A few people pointed out the age gap between us. Yeah, it's big. I was actually a surprise baby, my parents were only 19 when they had me. My mom was about 27 when she had my brother, so still very young. If there were fertility problems, I doubt they were age-related. Plus, both sides of the family are pretty fertile. My dad has 4 siblings, and my mom has 2. Some folks floated the idea that maybe Ancestry made a mistake. But if that were true, if someone else got my brother's results, then my brother's actual DNA would have still shown up as a match for me somewhere. But it hasn't. Not even once. And like someone else pointed out, what are the odds that the sample would be mixed up with someone from Venezuela, and not, say, a random person from the US or Europe? That would be one wild coincidence. At this point, the most logical explanations seem to be either a baby swap at the hospital, or that my brother was adopted under unusual circumstances, maybe without formal paperwork. I remember my mom once saying that his birth was difficult and there were complications, but I was too young at the time to understand what that meant. Some people even suggested maybe she faked a pregnancy to cover up an adoption. But I don't buy that for a second. I remember her being pregnant. I felt him kicking. I even put my face against her belly sometimes to try and hear him. She was definitely carrying a baby. I've also read that informal adoptions in Venezuela, especially in the early 2000s, weren't uncommon, especially given how things were starting to fall apart in the country. So maybe something happened at the hospital or something went wrong during the birth, and my parents were given another baby. But if that's the case, why wouldn't they tell me? I was old enough to understand what adoption meant. They could have been honest. The baby swap theory is starting to make the most sense now. Based on what I've read and what my mom told me years ago about how hospitals worked back then in Venezuela, things were far from ideal. The economy was collapsing, medical supplies were scarce, and protocol probably wasn't a top priority. I've been trying to figure out how to bring all this up without sounding accusatory or suspicious. I finally decided that I was going to talk to my mom directly and just ask her, did they need help conceiving? Did something happen during his birth? Was there any sort of adoption? I'd been mentally prepping myself for this conversation all day. I planned to call her, but I changed my mind and decided it needed to be in person. I figured she might get emotional, and honestly, I thought we'd both need a hug when it was over. Update 1: I want to share what happened after I decided to talk to her. I'd originally planned to call on Friday, but between work stress and 2 nights of barely any sleep, I held off. Instead, I drove to my parents' house that Saturday morning to have the conversation face to face. I thought it'd be easier in person. Plus, I didn't want to risk breaking down on the phone. I was a wreck. I felt nauseous the entire drive over. When I got there, both of my parents were home, which threw off my plan. I had hoped to speak to my mom alone first, Thinking on my feet, I told my dad I had a craving for those cookies he always buys from this bakery across town. To my relief, he offered to go get them right away. Total miracle. Once he left, I asked my mom to sit with me at the kitchen table. I brought up how, a few weeks back, I'd gotten my brother to do the DNA test, the one he had trouble with because he couldn't spit enough. She laughed and said of course she remembered. Then she asked if I'd finally gotten the results. I told her I had, but that something about them didn't add up. I asked, as calmly as I could, if she and Dad had ever used fertility treatments or anything like that when they were trying to have my brother. I think something in my tone must have tipped her off, because her face changed immediately. She went serious and said, "No, why would you ask that?" So I told her, directly and plainly, that the results showed my brother isn't her biological child. That he doesn't match with me, or with her, or with my cousin from Dad's side. That, according to the DNA, he isn't genetically related to any of us. I asked her if he was really their biological son or if they had used an embryo donor or adopted him. She looked at me like I'd lost my mind. She kept shaking her head and repeating that the test must be wrong. She was adamant, said my brother is hers and that something must be messed up with the results. So I pulled out my phone and showed her the breakdown from my brother's account, the ethnicity estimates, the lack of shared matches. I even opened my own results and showed her side-by-side comparisons. Still, she wouldn't accept it. She just kept saying, "These tests aren't reliable," over and over. I reminded her that my results matched perfectly with hers, that I also matched with people on both sides of our family, including relatives we actually know in real life. I explained that DNA matching is one of the most straightforward parts of these tests. It's not complicated science anymore, it's well established. I even told her how I'd already spent over an hour on the phone with customer support trying to see if it could have been a mistake, and they told me flat out that it wasn't. At that point, she was visibly shaking. And then she started to cry. She just kept saying, "This can't be true." I honestly believe my mom was telling the truth. She really did give birth to my brother, and everything about her reaction told me this wasn't some kind of cover-up. When my dad got back with the cookies I didn't even want, by the way, we had to awkwardly pretend to care about them. The second he walked in, though, he could tell something was off. My mom's face was red from crying, and I must have looked just as wrecked. He set the bag down and asked what was going on. So, I told him exactly what I told my mom. I laid it all out, including the DNA results and the fact that none of us matched my brother genetically. We ended up having pretty much the same back-and-forth argument I'd had with her, just with more voices now. He immediately went into defense mode, saying my brother was absolutely their son and that the DNA test had to be wrong. Then he got upset, asking why I was trying to stir up drama in the family. I showed him the results, explained everything again, and tried to keep calm while doing it. My mom, at this point, was crying openly. My dad started pacing around the kitchen, which is what he always does when something hits him hard. We kept going in circles, none of us knowing what to believe or what to say next. Eventually, I brought up what we were all probably already thinking. What if the hospital accidentally switched my brother with another baby? I was the first one to say it out loud, but you could see in their faces it wasn't a new thought. They didn't jump to deny it. At first, they said no. But there was this hesitation, like even they couldn't be sure. They started going over the details of my brother's birth. The hospital he was born in had a central nursery room where they kept all the newborns. He barely stayed in my mom's hospital room, they only brought him in for feedings. That was normal in Venezuela back then, they said. Babies were mostly kept in that nursery unless needed. They couldn't recall if the babies themselves had ID tags or if it was just the cribs that were labeled. They think there weren't tags on the babies directly, only the cribs. Which means, if a nurse ever put the wrong baby in the wrong crib, that was it. You'd never know. My dad said that after he was born, they cut the cord, cleaned him up a little, let my mom hold him briefly, maybe a minute or two, and then took him away. The next time they saw him, he was cleaner, wrapped in a blanket, and didn't have that white stuff newborns are usually covered in. They trusted that it was the same baby. But after only 10 minutes of contact right after birth, with all the chaos, hormones, and adrenaline, could anyone really recognize a newborn later on? I don't know. Let's be honest, most newborns look kind of similar when they first come out. All red, scrunched up, and alien-like. That's when my mom really started to fall apart. She kept repeating, "Does this mean someone else has my actual son?" It broke my heart. My dad had to calm her down and remind her we don't know anything for sure yet, not without more testing. They both agreed that one DNA test wasn't enough proof. We needed to dig deeper. So that's where we are now. They both swear my brother was conceived naturally and that my mom gave birth to him, and I believe them. The shock and sadness in their eyes wasn't fake. It was real. Way too real to be acting. We've now ordered multiple new DNA tests. My dad agreed to finally take the ancestry test. On top of that, we're doing 23andMe for both of my parents and my brother, just for comparison. And my dad said he'd also look into legal, clinic-run paternity and maternity testing, something that would be court admissible. They're planning to talk to my brother themselves. I told them it needed to come from them, not me. This isn't something I could or should handle on my own. It's too heavy. I'm really nervous about how he's going to take it. He's always been sensitive about feeling a little different from the rest of us. I remember him asking, even as a kid, why he was the only one with really dark eyes. My parents used to tell him he got them from a great-grandmother or something like that. I don't think that answer ever truly satisfied him. Yesterday, I went back to my parents' place to check in. They're not doing well. They looked exhausted and distant, like they'd been carrying a weight they weren't built for. My mom kept starting sentences and then trailing off like she forgot where she was going. My dad kept fidgeting with his phone, even though there were no new messages coming in. I tried to talk about normal stuff, just to distract them, but it didn't work. Their minds were somewhere else. I'm worried. About them. About my brother. About all of us, really. I just hope that whatever the next set of test results says, we all hold it together. I believe my parents will still love my brother no matter what. They raised him, they've loved him his entire life, he's their son in every way that counts. But if he's not biologically theirs, it means their actual biological son is out there somewhere. That's hard to wrap your head around. When I left their house yesterday, my mom hugged me for a long time, like a full minute. She whispered in my ear, "I'm so glad you're mine." I nearly lost it right then and there. I can't even begin to imagine how painful this must be for her. I'm scared. And I can't stop thinking about how they must feel. It's like this entire situation aged them 10 years overnight. My dad told me my mom hasn't been sleeping at all. She just sits up flipping through old photo albums, looking at baby pictures of my brother, over and over again. I wish I had more of an update for you. I know this isn't much in terms of hard answers. We're still waiting on the new test results to come in. All we can do now is wait and try to breathe through the unknown. Thank you so much to everyone who commented and supported me after my last post. It's meant more than you know to have people to talk to through all of this. I'll definitely update again when we get more info, but honestly, it might take a little while. Update 2, hi again. It's been about 6 months since I originally shared this story, and a lot of people have been reaching out to ask what happened, so here's the latest. I never imagined this post would get so much attention, but I guess stories like this don't happen every day. Quick recap if you didn't read the earlier parts. I got my brother to take an ancestry DNA test. When his results came back, he didn't match with me, our mom, or our cousin from dad's side. I spoke with Ancestry Support, and they confirmed the test was accurate. There was no mix-up. My parents were stunned. None of this made sense to any of us at first. We eventually landed on one possible explanation: our brother might have been accidentally switched with another baby at the hospital in Venezuela where he was born. After that, we sat down with my brother and told him everything. It was one of the hardest conversations I've ever witnessed. It happened one evening after dinner at my parents' place. We were all in the living room. My parents did the talking, I mostly sat in silence. They explained that we discovered something unexpected in the DNA results, and that it looked like he might not be biologically related to any of us. His reaction was exactly what you'd expect: first shock, then anger, then silence. At first, he thought we were messing with him, like it was some cruel prank. He even accused me of tampering with the test somehow. Eventually, he just stopped talking altogether. My mom was crying. My dad was trying to act calm and hold it together, but I could see the pain all over his face. I showed my brother the Ancestry app on my phone, laid everything out, side by side, with all the DNA results and comparisons. After a long pause, he said he needed some time to process it all. Then he went straight to his room and didn't come out for the rest of the night. The next morning, it was like nothing had ever happened. He acted totally normal, which honestly felt a little eerie. But I figured that might just be his way of coping: bury it, pretend it's not there, at least until it sinks in. About a week later, my parents, my brother, and I went to a local lab to do proper, legally valid paternity and maternity tests. I didn't need to be there for the test itself, but I went along anyway for moral support. They took cheek swabs from all three of them, and the doctor told us we'd get the results in about a week. That week felt like the longest stretch of time any of us had lived through. My mom was barely functioning, just going through the motions. My dad dove into work and stayed there as much as possible, clearly trying to avoid sitting with the uncertainty. My brother, strangely, seemed calm. Detached, even. As for me, I tried to stay level-headed for everyone else, but inside I was unraveling. Then the results came in negative. My brother isn't biologically related to either of our parents. Even though we had expected that based on the ancestry results, seeing it confirmed by a real medical lab hit us hard. My mom took a week off work to collect herself. My brother disappeared for a few days, staying at a friend's place without telling anyone where he'd gone. We were terrified until he finally texted back. I felt like I was holding the whole situation together with duct tape and hope. After that, we had a lot of hard conversations. There were tears. There was silence. 6 months later, we're doing better, at least on the surface. But deep down, there's still a storm of unanswered questions. Mainly, what happened to the baby my mom gave birth to? Is he still alive? What kind of life did he end up living? Did he ever find out the truth? Who are my brother's biological parents? Are they looking for him? Did they ever realize something was off? Are they even still in Venezuela? We've talked those questions into the ground, but we're no closer to answers than we were half a year ago. My mom gave birth in a private hospital in Caracas, and from Spain, my parents have tried everything they can. They've sent emails, made phone calls, even hired a lawyer in Venezuela to dig into it. But the hospital claims they lost all records from before 2008 due to a system upgrade. Just gone. They say there's nothing unusual in their files, no complaints, no anomalies, nothing. We're all convinced they're just covering their tracks. The lawyer couldn't make any more progress than we did. He said that without any official documentation, there's no way to prove what happened. And with Venezuela's legal system being as broken and corrupt as it is right now, pushing the matter through the courts would be nearly impossible. Still, my parents are planning to go back to Venezuela later this year, assuming the political situation allows them to. They want to visit the hospital in person, maybe find someone who used to work there, a nurse or a doctor from 2004, and see if anyone remembers anything at all. It's a long shot, but they're holding on to whatever hope they can. The only thing that gives us some peace of mind is that it was a private hospital, not a public one. If there was a baby switch, chances are our biological sibling went home with another middle-class family. Most Venezuelans don't have the means to afford private healthcare, so that narrows it down a little. But Caracas is massive, and this happened nearly 20 years ago. The odds aren't in our favor. As for my brother, he's been trying to piece things together from his end. He's taken just about every DNA test out there now, 23andMe, MyHeritage, Family Tree DNA. He's contacted everyone he's matched with, trying to find any possible lead. The closest match he's found so far is a guy in the US originally from Cuba, with a 72 cm shared DNA segment, which isn't close enough to be anything more than a distant cousin. The guy had no idea who my brother could be and didn't know of any Venezuelan family connections. Truth is, most Venezuelans still living in the country aren't taking DNA tests. They've got bigger things to worry about: food, medicine, safety. So my brother's matches are mostly people who live in the US or people who never respond. He goes through phases with it all. Sometimes he's obsessed, researching genealogy for hours, joining online groups, posting in forums. Other times, he shuts it down entirely and says he wants to forget about the whole thing. I think that's just how he manages the emotional roller coaster it's too much to live in constantly. My mom has struggled the most. She started seeing a therapist to help her deal with what she calls the grief of a child I never got to know. My dad is more action-oriented. He's focused on planning the trip back to Venezuela, chasing answers wherever he can. I think that's how he copes, doing instead of dwelling. As for me, I'm just trying to support everyone without falling apart myself. I'll admit, I feel guilty. If I hadn't pushed for these DNA tests, we would have never known. We'd still be living in blissful ignorance. I don't know if that would have been better, but I wonder about it a lot. Last month, my brother asked me if I thought his birth parents might be looking for him. I didn't know what to say. I hope they are. But maybe they never knew there was a mix-up. Maybe they're perfectly happy with the son they raised, my biological brother. Maybe they passed away. Who knows? There are just too many unknowns. So that's where we are now. We still don't have any real answers. And we may never get them unless by some miracle, my biological brother takes a DNA test one day and pops up as a match. Or maybe my brother's biological family will do the same. This whole thing has shaken our family to the core. It's been especially hard on my brother and our parents, but somehow, we're still standing. Life goes on. We're adapting. I just hope that, someday, some piece of this puzzle clicks into place. Maybe my brother will find a real connection to his biological roots. Maybe my parents will get closure about the son they lost without knowing. Maybe I'll get to meet the brother I never knew I had. Thanks for sticking with me through all of this. Your support, advice, and just being there to listen has meant more than I can say. I probably won't post another update unless something major happens, But if this experience has taught me anything, it's that life can throw wild curveballs when you least expect them.